The Lewis Prize for Music partners with leaders in diverse and vibrant communities who invest in young people through music. We'll give 3 $500,000 Accelerator Awards each January through 2024 to creative youth development organizations that prioritize music as a resource for achieving equitable individual and community strength, voice, and agency. We encourage youth music programs, large and small, from all over the country to apply. How does this work? First, our application opens on our website at theLewisPrize.org. All applications submitted are then reviewed by our Round 1 external readers. Our Round 1 readers submit recommendations to the Lewis Prize for Music team to review the recommended applications and narrow down the pool. Round 2 external readers review the narrowed pool and make finalist recommendations to the Lewis Prize for Music Board of Directors. Next, finalists are notified, submit an RFP, and host virtual site visits for the Lewis Prize for Music team. We publicly announce the finalists prior to the finalist review panel deliberation. The finalist review panel is composed of young people and professionals who read the finalists' full applications and make recommendations to the Lewis Prize for Music Board of Directors. And finally, each January, our top awardees are publicly announced and we celebrate. That's our process. Visit our website at theLewisPrize.org for updates and resources.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Ann Gregg with the Lewis Prize for Music, and we'll see each other in a moment with our fabulous guests to this webinar for our partners and Accelerator awardees from INTEMPO, Angie, Robbin, and Nicole. Today's conversation is really to get an inside look at the Lewis Prize for Music with our friends from INTEMPO and to ask questions. Before we get into our conversation, just want to give everyone a few frames of reference for the Lewis Prize for Music. Lewis Prize for Music is a national philanthropic foundation with a commitment of 5 years through the generous donation of Daniel Lewis. And we uplift CYD, creative youth development, through music, leadership, community, equity, vision, and systems change. That's the lens in which we look at amazing work that takes place all over the United States. Something central to our work is the voice of young people. We know that none of this would be possible without young people, their hopes, their dreams, their voices, their ideas, their leadership. And so through our process and our awarding, we center them in all that we do. We believe that thriving and vibrant communities can only be achieved through equitable systems. We aim to award ambitious organizations who are already strengthening young people through rigorous and diverse music programs and influencing systems so all young people can develop greater agency over their lives and contribute positively to their communities. A little about our funding. We have the applications open right now for our Accelerator Awards, where we will go through a process that leads us to awarding 3 organizations $500,000 multi-year awards. An additional 5 to 7 organizations will receive $50,000 to $75,000 as finalists. An additional 12 to 15 organizations will receive $15,000 at the semifinalist round. And to get to that semifinalist rounds, we will provide $1,000 to those invited to submit round 2 materials. So funding is available throughout the process of applying to the Lewis Prize for Music. And this is our timeline. The application is open now through June 2nd. Round 2 will be in July. Finalists invited to complete a request for a proposal and host a site visit. Those happen in the fall, and we will publicly announce the new awardees in January. All of this information can be found on our website and also in an upcoming webinar where we unpack the application. We'll tell you more about that at the end. But today it is really a pleasure, and I'm going to stop my screen in a moment, to have a conversation with our good friends at INTEMPO. The organization won the Accelerator Award in 2022. And I will stop my screen so we can meet everyone right now. Hey, everyone from INTEMPO. Hello, friends.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Buenas tardes.
With us are Angie Durrell, the founder and leader of INTEMPO, and team members, Robbin Juris and Nicole Rodas. Thank you all for joining and having this conversation about our partnership together and what the Lewis Prize for Music looks for in applications, as well as a little bit more in-depth look at your work and how you define systems change, a key part of the application. So for everyone who's participating, you'll see a couple of other people in the webinar format. Our CEO, DeLuge Smith, is here. Our colleague, Shanika, is helping behind the scenes, Shanika John Jordan. And the goal of today is, as I said, to have a conversation. We'll also see a few videos, and at the end, there'll be time for your questions. We will answer as many as we can. If we don't get to your questions, no worries. We are recording this, and we'll take those questions and answer them through FAQ, or we'll give you a way to email us as well. So with that, let's begin the conversation. Angie, I want to start with you. As the leader of INTEMPO, I know one of the things that we ask in the application is that the application is written in the leader's voice. And so to start with you, wondering if you could just say a little bit about who you are and about INTEMPO, just to really ground us in the amazing work you do, and then start us off with what it was like applying for the Lewis Prize.
Yeah, thank you. And so delighted to be here and so incredibly grateful for the Lewis Prize team and the great vision of Mr. Daniel Lewis for being so generous and intentional with his philanthropy. To give a background about myself, I am an immigrant violinist, originally from Ecuador, migrated to Connecticut in around 1998. And I've always identified as an immigrant, as a Latina, as a violinist, in an ethnic minority, as a female. And that's just everything that has influenced any decision that I make, both for my career, partnerships, and personal projects. So definitely founding INTEMPO in 2011 was a result of feeling isolated and noticing that not only was I one of two musicians of color in my college music program, a few handful of violinists of color in my youth orchestra, growing up, but also none of my culture, language, repertoire, instrumentations from Latin America, South America specifically, was reflected in any of the programming that I participated on. So I felt that that was very important for me in just preserving my identity and sharing it with other community members that are, of immigrant descent here in the United States. And nonetheless, finding a mechanism to transmit that to younger children who were in my shoes when I was an 8-year-old fourth grader in a bilingual classroom in the public school systems, who just felt and experienced isolation every single day. So that is the impetus behind INTEMPO, and this is our 12th year. We're excited to have celebrated our first decade and are looking forward to the following decade and many more years to come. To also emphasize, this was our second year applying for the Lewis Prize. So, I want to encourage everybody to not give up. With many grants, we've gotten many no's and we've gotten a few yeses. So I know that it's a numbers game, and it's just persistence and perseverance. So the second year in 2021, when we were applying to become a 2022 awardee, we really took the feedback from the initial round to heart, both not just from a writing standpoint, but also from a programmatic design standpoint. And sorry, my dog is in the window. But also, I speak from a very colloquial style. I, speak in a way that our parents would be able to understand us, in a way that our students will be able to understand me. And I speak the same if I'm in a funders meeting and a board meeting than when I'm with my family and friends. So I wanted to be very intentional about writing it in that form and not necessarily falling into the grant writing jargon or looking to be more sophisticated so that we would be eligible for the Lewis Prize and start getting 6-digit gifts, but actually just telling our story and just telling it how it is, writing it in a way that our young people will be able to read it and understand it in a way that our young board members and alumni and our staff too would be able to read it and say, yeah, that's actually what we do, or yes, that's what we're striving for. So it took multiple iterations, and we've been telling our stories all day every day for the past 12 years, so I have the great privilege of having a great team who has also internalize this story. Like, this is our story. This is our collective efforts. This is our INTEMPO story, that was driven by a founder, but it's the same story of an immigrant 8-year-old from Guatemala who may be in our current school system now in 2023. So we were just very intentional about it. And also, we are always ourselves. We bring our own selves. We're unapologetic about who we are as cultural representatives and what we are trying to do about immigrant inclusion. And it's been many years of having to resist and to go against what this mainstream Western classical music landscape looks like currently in the USA, to say there's something unique happening out of Stamford, Connecticut with our INTEMPO families, and we'll bring it to you, and we hope that it's worthy of this prize. And if it's not, we're going to continue doing the work and try to enlist more supporters. And thankfully, we were able to enlist the Lewis Prize as a main supporter.
Yeah, we love being in partnership with you. And just before we open the webinar to everyone, we were talking amongst ourselves saying so many of us in this webinar knew each other before the Lewis Prize. I know what it's like coming from the programmatic side, coming from nonprofit. The tension you can feel, the anxiety around applying for something, and really letting go of that and saying, what is the authentic voice of the leader? And how do we get a sense through this application of who the organization and the community really are? So Angie, thank you so much for touching on all of those points. We're going to get into a little bit of the content area of the application. But before we do, we want to do a quick poll just to see who's here. So Shanika's going to help us out, and everyone will see a poll on their screen. If you can just answer that question, and we'll share the results later. Answering that. Great. Has your organization applied before? The results coming in, 30%. About 30% have said yes, about 67 no. And as Angie was saying, we have seen Accelerator awardees come from both sides of this poll question, where some people have received the award in the past and others have not. And I'll share the results so everyone can see what I'm seeing. Thank you all for being here and for answering that poll. Let's dig in a little bit to the application content. And Nicole, I'm going to come to you with the first area of the application that we wanted to touch base on and really understand what it means to you at INTEMPO. And that's around youth leadership. So Nicole, could you say a little bit about like how you're involved at INTEMPO and what youth leadership really means to you.
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Nicole and I am the youth navigator at INTEMPO. I'm a youth myself. I was one of the youth readers for Lewis Prize last year, and youth leadership at INTEMPO means really just creating a space for students to express themselves, and being really open and knowing that they have somebody on staff or somebody as an adult that they look up to, that they can really connect with. And they know that it doesn't have to relate anything to music, but they know that they have somebody there. And we really encourage them to take on leadership opportunities, whether they are music related or non-music related, and they involve the community. So at INTEMPO, currently we have 2 youth councils, but previously, before we received the Accelerator Award from Lewis Prize, we had one general youth council, which was some mostly high schoolers mixed with middle school students. But now we do have 2 different councils because we did realize that we needed age appropriate topics for each of them. And so the high school council really focuses and touches upon topics revolving life skills, workforce development, topics like that. And they also come to me and tell me topics that they really want to talk about, have like debates, discussions, what really impacts them. They this year they currently participated in a feedback session in our city because our schools are doing a 5-year strategic plan. So they held a panel on feedback from parents in a bilingual session. So that's really a proud moment for us because we're really giving them that leadership opportunity outside of INTEMPO. But then they also receive leadership opportunities in INTEMPO, as now that we have 2 youth councils. Some of them come in from the high school council. They lead some sessions for the middle schoolers. And so now these middle school students have somebody to look up to, and both in a musical way because they do see that these students are talented and they're really rising, but they also see them as their friends and they really connect with them as well. And now our middle school students, they touch base on identity, discovering who they are, because it is a tough time for them navigating middle school and that transition from middle school to high school, and how high school really passes by really fast and then you go off to college. So it's something about them, finding their identity. They do career topics, like figuring out what they might be interested in. And I tell them, it's like, we're not defining what your career will be, but we're just trying to give you a push into looking what you want to do for your future. And that's really what it's about, just creating a safe space for these kids to come in after their music lessons or throughout the week and feeling comfortable to talk with me or any other adult in the building, and just really feeling comfortable and promoting that leadership in INTEMPO and outside of INTEMPO as well.
That's amazing. And I love how what I'm hearing is things evolved very organically, very much like with young people. Oh, they're saying this, we need this. And that things can have a very simple start. We're going to see a short video that actually came in through your application. And Nicole, do you want to set up what this video is?
Yeah, so this video that will be shown right now is a student of INTEMPO. She's actually a youth. Her name is Melissa, and she was one of the few students that started off, actually even before I joined INTEMPO, on staff, but she was our very beginning of youth leadership and like creating this youth council. And yeah, she did an interview with Angie, so.
Great. I'll bring this up now. And just a reminder for people that as a part of the application, we do ask for some media samples. Those are up to you. They can be music based, they can be talk based. We like to see part of the process that's your music making. We also like to see just where you are in your organization with young people, and where you are in relation to music. So choosing things that are very intentional, authentic to who you are. And this next example, I hope, shows exactly those things. So here is a short clip with a conversation between Melissa and Angie.
What was it like? So this summer you were working with Whitney, who is our alumni. You were, peers with her, and now she's your supervisor. What was it like? Can you just tell us?
It was less like boss and coworker. It was more like, oh, we're familiars now. So she was able to, since we knew each other, she was able to like help me. She knew my way of work and I knew her way of work. So we were able to like collaborate and compromise anything that was needed. For example, if she needed to get something done, she was less like, oh, you need to do this now. She was more like, oh, I'm gonna do this if you can help me and do this. She was more friendly and more like a friend and less like a boss.
Mm-hmm. Do you see yourself taking that role eventually, or do you see your other peers from INTEMPO being able to have little mini Whitneys and more of Melissa's, developing? How could we do that?
I do see more people, like if we can teach them in the right way, people becoming like Whitney and figuring out a way to collaborate, like how me and Whitney work. I do find that in INTEMPO's future, and it could happen. What we just have to do is help instruct them on how to do that. For example, me and Whitney had to grow on like, oh, you can do this and we'll help you with that. But me and Whitney can also like help teach others like, oh, this is a good way to collaborate. Instead of bossing people around, you could just sort of like become familiars and then help each other in that way.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
So great. And from really understanding what it's like to be in relationship with one young person to the big idea and the other parts that we want to touch on from the application. Robbin, I'm going to invite you to just touch base on what feels best to touch base on for the time we have around three big areas. It's not fair to say, talk about pieces of this, but three other areas of the application: the big idea, partnerships, racial equity, and inclusion, which for everybody, we're going to talk about systems change overall. And we know that systems change includes so much of what it means to be in partnership with community, with young people, with a lens of equity and inclusion. So we're gonna get to that. But in terms of the application itself, Robbin, what does some of that mean to you at INTEMPO?
Well, thanks, Ann. It's so wonderful to be here with everybody. I think that when we think about the big idea, we're answering the what question, but also the why question and the how question. And the big idea is really tying together what you're trying to achieve to the system that you're trying to change. And in our case, the big idea was to normalize immigrant inclusion and visibility. So in whatever we do, and what we always try to communicate to whoever is listening to us, is that we want young people from immigrant backgrounds to be in people's first thoughts and not in their afterthoughts. And this might mean, like, for example, at INTEMPO, our students performing on the main stage of a well-regarded, high-profile performing arts center, rather than on their lawn as decoration or as background music or as an ornamentation for their purposes. We want our kids to be recognized for the artists that they are. I think in our application also we try to show how the big idea informs and permeates every programmatic choice that we make, every repertoire choice, how we engage with our young people and their families, how youth voice gets amplified, how it informs our advocacy work and who our partners are and who we hire. Really everything we do is guided by our big idea. And another example, we involve students in hiring decisions before we bring on new teaching artists. So basically, prospective teaching artists have to audition for our students. They do practice class. We meet afterwards. We talk it through with the kids, and they tell us yay or nay, and we listen. So I think that if that's one of the ways that youth voice plays out in prospective applicants organizations, that might be something that they would want to lift up. In general, I think that like an application, like each part of an application should speak to other parts of the application, so that what you end up with is an application that has internal cohesion. And this also gets to systems change and partnerships, because just about every organization's work touches on so many aspects of systems change. Lots of it touches on lots of focus areas. But I think that overall it's really important to identify the top focus area on your list. Basically, your organization's reason for being, and then you can explain, how the work you do in other focus areas isn't just an add-on, but is really something that flows out of your top priority and reinforces it, and is really additive. And I could, if you'd like me to go on about systems change and how this relates to systems change, I can. Or if you want me to stop there, I can wait.
Let's pause just for a moment. But I love what you're saying about really being thoughtful about everything coming back to the big idea, coming back to thinking about young people and what they would say and what they would want us to say through this application and through that leader voice, but reflecting young people at all times. I love thinking about how to keep it simple, how to always come back to that. That makes a lot of sense. As the Lewis Prize for Music, we do just want to share one other video so that people watching in can hear a little bit of the great musical work that's happening at INTEMPO, and then we'll talk about systems change. But Angie, do you want to say a little bit about musical practice and just set up the video for us around what music means at INTEMPO?
Yeah, so I think we're showing the project of Where We Belong, Reflections on Resilience. And for us, any music that we do at INTEMPO has to be representative of a different culture that our students come from. It has to sound like the way that we speak, and it has to come from the nationality or from the voices of our own community. So this was part of a bigger project that we had the opportunity to do with Carnegie Hall's Play USA project. And this specific, it's like a mini documentary plus a commissioning project that it's a total of 7 minutes, but we're gonna show in a minute and a half. But it ties in our new Arrivals program, students from our English language learners programs in the public schools, as well as our student musicians from our after school program in our Center of Excellence site in Stanford. So that is, that's what you'll see. And that is something that I hope you will always experience when you experience an INTEMPO performance.
I am Catherine. I am 10 years old and I am from Guatemala.
Jose Rodriguez.
My name is Isabella and my last name is Bedina. Yo soy Helen, yo soy de Colombia, tengo 7 años y mi familia es de Colombia. Hi, my name is Evelyn. I'm 10 years old and I'm from Guatemala. I don't feel different because I'm an immigrant and people are different in their own ways.
My name is Tommy Kondo. I'm 13 years old and my family's from Ecuador. Music to me is to show like other people what you feel.
My name is Helen. I'm 13 years old and I'm from Guatemala. The violin makes me feel secure because I know that if I don't know the language, I still know the violin and I can play it anywhere in the world and people will still understand what I'm saying.
That was awesome. I have to watch that 3 or 4 more times because every time I see it, I hear and see something new. I love that. Great. Well, we are at the heart of this webinar. And so let's talk about the heart of this work and our partnership, which is thinking about systems change. We at the Lewis Prize know that systems change isn't done by any one person or any one organization, that we in philanthropy have a part in systems change. And so we do internal work around racial equity and look at our practices in systems change internally as a philanthropic foundation as much as we do in partnership with organizations. And we also know that systems change means different things to different people. So to spend some time with understanding what it means at INTEMPO, can we just hear from each of you a little bit about what systems change means for you and how it shows up in INTEMPO's work? Robbin, maybe we'll start with you and then hear from Nicole and finish hearing from Angie.
Sure. Well, I think when we think about systems change, we're thinking about examining and confronting root causes rather than symptoms. So we never want to pathologize anyone or anything, but we want to look at the causes. The other aspect of our systems change work is establishing collaborative work with partners where we can align our goals so that we can have collective impact. And then really so much of what we do involves shifting the conversation away from focusing on deficits and towards focusing on capabilities. So, and this really relates to the video I think that you just saw, because we've been working with the public schools on bringing in a specialized music program to address the specific needs and challenges faced by children who are learning to speak English. So an example of our systems change process here was, one, getting the meetings with the school superintendent, the school systems director of family engagement, the director of its English learners program, the principals, the social workers, the teachers, and then to discuss how our program could be, as I said before, additive. And prying open those doors was not trivial. This took years and a lot of advocacy. And then the next part of it was overcoming any skepticism on the part of the English learners teachers at the schools about what we might be doing in their classrooms. But I can give you one anecdote that really kind of explains like how we won over hearts and minds. One teacher that we work with told us how she watched with amazement when one of her students sang the lyric "Morning bells are ringing" when she saw a cookie that was in the shape of a bell. And the teacher was amazed that this English learner in her class who had learned the song Frere Jacques through our program weeks earlier was able to see this cookie, had internalized the vocabulary, was able to sing, had memorized the song, and was able to apply it in a totally different context. And this this was like a win for everybody, for the child, for the teacher, for us, because the teacher saw a capacity in her student that she never imagined was there. And she's more likely to see that capacity in other students. So I think that's really like a very concrete example of systems change, starting from really at the very top, where you're dealing with administration and trying to show how your goals are really in alignment, to bringing it all the way down into the classroom to the student level, and seeing how your work has just has really been so absorbed by the student, and how the teachers, the scales from the teacher's eyes have, were dropped, and the teacher saw something that was she didn't expect or didn't think was even possible. So that's kind of how I think our systems change work plays out from the top to the bottom. But maybe I'm sure Angie has other thoughts that she would like to add to that.
Yeah, sure. If I may go before Nicole, since Robbin just gave us just the perfect segue. To me personally, systems change here in the United States has a different connotation as an immigrant, or coming as opposed feeling like a foreigner in a country that was not necessarily built for us. It may have been built by us, but systemically it didn't keep all of our needs in mind. And the way that we intentionally bring this out to our families is to educate them, inform them, and hold their hands so that they can believe in the educational system, and they can navigate and learn how to advocate for themselves, how to advocate for their children, and what does self-agency mean, so that, because they do it every day. They stand up for themselves. They stand up for their kids. They moved to a different country to give their children a better future, so they're already looking for this change. And now how can they do this in their day-to-day lives? One story that comes to mind is the US Census in 2020, that little did we know that the local census committee in Stanford would call us to say, hey, we want to get people counted. We know there's a large immigrant population, Spanish speakers, who are not filling out the census, or who have not filled it out in the past because they don't trust the system, or they come from a political landscape where they don't believe in government, they don't believe in the banking system necessarily. How can you help us, and how can we work together? So, I was very honored and thrilled that we can be part of the census efforts. And, we commissioned a piece a song so that people could hear on the streets, hear around in their neighborhoods, and go canvassing on the weekends, on the evenings, in the mornings, go where they hang out and talk to them about the importance of filling out the census and why it's important for us to be counted. So later on, when we got the census results, Stanford became the second largest city in Connecticut, and we knew that we had a larger population than the other cities, from the past 10 decades, because we've had such a huge immigrant influx, but the census data did not reflect that. And being able to convey that to our students, to our families, to say, hey, funding for schools is based on the census. So if you don't get counted, you're not going to have the resources that we need to better serve you. And this is a data point that we refer back to on a daily basis, on a regular basis. And to be able to say that we had a little say in these efforts through music, through a bilingual music song that was commissioned and involved our kids and our local artists, it's an important way for us to say, this is how we bring visibility and voice to community members, and how we bring awareness to a system that we all have to navigate and learn how to navigate on our own every day.
And speaking of navigation, as the youth navigator, Nicole, what does systems change mean to you?
I think it means really working with the schools. As Robbin said, it's really just giving these students who are immigrants and in the new arrivals program some equity, and like really setting that standard for receiving the same programs that other students receive. And I think one story that I can tell about this is in one of our sites for the new arrivals programs, since we're in multiple different schools in the public system, but one specific school, I know that most of these end of the school year recitals that students do with their band teacher or whatever music program they're in the public school system, they don't include the new arrivals programs, or they don't include any of these kids because they don't play an instrument, and they're just starting to learn the English language. And one of our teachers that was working in this new arrivals programs got 5 different classrooms to sing bilingual songs in front of the school for this recital. And it was just really like an amazing moment where this new arrivals program was included for the first time in this recital for their school. And it was just so amazing to see the parents of these kids who probably experienced it for the first time, seeing their kid on stage and in front of the whole school. And yeah, I think it's just working in the schools and really pushing to get these kids on the same level as other kids in the school system.
Amazing. So from school systems to the census to the stage, what it means for individual young people and how we move together. How are we in relationship with each other? That we see each other in our movements, in our actions. Beautiful. Thank you all so much. We are moving toward the end of this webinar, and I think we will move into questions. So just put those final questions into the Q&A and we will answer as many as we can. Just to say, while people are putting questions in, we won't have time to touch on other parts of the application, but just a reminder that that application now, centered in the leader's voice and written from the leader, can be a collaborative process as that leader is writing the application. If readers like Nicole and Robbin in the past have both been readers of the application phase, if they read your authentic story, if they read that young people are at the center of what you do, if they read a lot of heart, a lot of intention, we do move into a more formal RFP process and a virtual site visit. Those site visits are all virtual, no matter where you are in the country, and we do that so that we can use more of our Lewis Prize resources to send your way and to put in the hands of the organizations. So we won't touch on that today, but if people here get to that level, come back and we'll get together and answer questions about that. Let's answer a few questions just about what we've talked about today or about the application process. And I will read a question from the Q&A. It says, we are a youth development program with 15 different programs. When you say the application should be written in the leader's voice, would that be the leader of our music program, our program director, or our executive director? The intention is really the leader of the organization, the executive director. So that is really the intention of the application. Next question, will you consider programs that primarily focus on digital music production and DJing? I will say yes. Great music instruction can be in any genre. And I know if people are interested in exploring other Lewis Prize awardees and who the applications have come from, we have many organizations that are multi-genre and that also have a digital focus. Angie, is there anything you want to say just about digital at INTEMPO and what that looks like for you?
Yeah, so we went digital in 2019. It was perfect timing because it prepared our kids right before the pandemic. And it was a wonderful anonymous donation of Mac Minis that we were like, what can we do with them? And then, our kids were able to start playing with, GarageBand. We were fortunate to bring in a Grammy Award winning producer to work with them and really inspire them to see how they can take their music from performing, from a monologue standpoint to a digital standpoint. And that then led us to being able to deploy all of our computers from our audio production lab to the hands of our kids once the pandemic got started. So our kids were not foreign to using the computer and navigating it. They had already been doing this for 2 years before the pandemic. And now this has led to great new partnerships. Our kids do podcasts. We're in a great new office building for this. So I definitely encourage the applicants to look at who has been the finalists. I know that shout out to Building Beats from New York City was one of the finalists. So definitely, do your research. We spent hours and hours in telling everybody that has won the Lewis Prize in the past few years, in telling everybody that's on their staff. It's a lot of intentional work. So that would be something that I would, just put out to the questions that are being asked right now.
Awesome. And just to piggyback on that, are rap and hip hop recognized as genres of music that can be considered? The answer is yes. If there is a musical genre or multiple genres that your organization invites young people to explore, most likely if it's coming from young people and they're involved, it's going to be multi-genre, it's going to be eclectic. You might focus on something, but it's infused with something else. We say yes to all of it. Angie, another question for you. What would you say was the toughest part of the application, and how many times did you apply prior to acceptance? What was the toughest part, and how many tries did you have at it?
Yeah. First time we didn't, I think we advanced to maybe like the next round, but then, that was it. We got feedback, and the feedback was on youth voice. So that was really the toughest part, that we really needed to listen, and that we always need to listen. The second time we, thankfully got it. And there was a question that says, how do you listen to your voice, and what does youth voice look like in your organization? And that was honestly the toughest one, because we were like, we're still figuring things out. And we were saying, let's go with the honest route and say, we don't have all the answers, but this is what we would do. This is how we are listening to our kids. We assembled, focus group. We, asked the kids questions as to like, what do you want to see part of INTEMPO? And if we got $500,000, what would that look like for you? We asked the parents, we asked our partners, we asked our staff, we asked our board. So that was really the toughest part, because we also had a deadline to meet, and we had to give people time to answer and give us feedback. And for me as a leader, it's not necessarily tough, but it's something that we are committed to, and I am committed to saying to Nicole, if the youth council is going to decide on something, I will support whatever decision they have. And, whether I agree with it or not, or whether I would have done it differently, it's their decision, and they have my blessing, and they have our full support. If the team agrees to bring someone in or to not bring someone in, they feel comfortable coming to me and expressing how they feel about INTEMPO's growth and who's part of our team. And that was not necessarily a big change, but that's something that we are committed to. And it's wonderful now because INTEMPO is not just one person, one leader. It's a team of great professionals who have buy-in, and people that know that we will be hearing them.
That's great. Thank you so much for that. Before we leave with a few closing points, I think we answered all the questions that were in the chat. A few things just as we end. I'm going to share screen one final time. To say thank you so much for being here today. This has been a really interesting conversation, and I hope in hearing it, it has answered a lot of questions that just came up for you as you were participating. If you have more questions about the application itself, we do have one more informational session on May 18th at 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. And that is also in webinar format, where it will focus in much more specifically on the content of the application and some technical points about the accepted platform and just how to approach the application itself. Everything that you've heard today can also be accessed through our website, theLewisPrize.org, and you can also reach out to us there with questions and follow up that you have about the application itself. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook with these hashtags. And just thank you. We would not do what we do if we weren't inspired by the work all of you do and the work that organizations like INTEMPO and all of you do with young people. So just a big thank you. As I'm saying thank you, if Dalug, our CEO, and Shanika want to turn their cameras on, just invite you for a moment to just wave and just say hello to people. There's Dalug. There's Shanika. Systems change. This work is all about relationships, and we couldn't be more grateful than to be in relationship with INTEMPO. Thank you all for joining us. Angie, Nicole, Robbin, any final words that you want to say before we leave with one final fantastic video? Any final words?
Keep doing it. Don't give up. Keep doing the great work, and seize every opportunity that you have, because for every no you'll get one yes, and that one yes could be a life-changing moment like the Lewis Prize has been for us. So keep at it.
Great advice. Thank you everyone for coming, and let's be in touch. And as we go out, we'll share one last video with the great work that INTEMPO does. Take care, everyone. Thanks for being here.
When our love for living leads us to follow the most uncertain path, our love for living leads us to follow wild turn, risk it all to learn, see through illusion and fly. Every wild turn, risk it all to unlearn anything that keeps us from the sky. The voice of the universe. We are the voice of the universe. We are the voice of the universe.